We have 2 more minutes and then we will start. All right, good morning, everybody. Trust that you guys are all well and welcome to our session for today. My name is Mr. Afikile Sikwebo. You can call me Mr. Sikwebo or Mr. Afikile, whichever one is easy to remember for you. So my email address is afikile@africateamgeeks.co.za. You can find it right in front of us there, and you can use that to ask me any questions or to send me comments about our lessons. So yes, if you have anything that you would like to share with me, you can send it to that email address. I'm a teacher at Linkside High School. That is a school in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. And I teach CAT. And this year I will also teach digital technologies. So for anyone who is joining us for the first time, you are welcome to our sessions. I trust that you are going to enjoy yourself. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write them down. And towards the end of this lesson, you can ask all your questions. I hope that everybody has registered, and I also hope that everyone has also registered and logged into Misora before we start today. Once again, thank you for taking your time to join us this morning. Oh, wow, this afternoon. So what we are going to do today, or in fact, as we just do a quick recap, yesterday we really just looked at drawing shapes in Misora, and we drew a few shapes and we looked at how we can draw patterns according to code. So that is what we did yesterday. And today we want to look at creating jumping sprites in Misora. As I said to you guys, if you have any ideas of things that we can do, please share them with me. Otherwise, I will do ideas that come to my mind. So we are going to look at jumping sprites in Misora. And in order to do that, we are going to create, well, you guessed it, a short game to look at how we can simulate jumping in Misora. We also then, from then, we are, as part of that game, we are going to look at nested if-then blocks, the decision block, which says, if something happens, then you must do something else. And we will also look at switching backdrops when a particular event happens. So I think we may have looked at this one last week, but I think it is it won't hurt us if we look at it again. And then finally, we are going to look at changing the values of variables. We looked at variables last week again, but I think as we have variables in our in our code, it will not help us. It will not hurt us to do it again. So that is what we are going to do today. And we are first going then to log in. And if I can choose my second screen, if you can just give me a minute to close this one. And then I shall open my internet browser. If I can find it. Okay, there we are. So now I have an internet browser open, and you can choose any browser that you use. For mine, I have Safari. So what we are going to do is to log in to Miss Zora. So we do that by searching or going to the address bar and type MS Zora, ZORA.co.za, and you press enter. Sorry. Okay, so there we are. And we are then going to log in. For those of you guys who have login details already, you are going to press on, you are going to press log in. And at this dialog box, or on this dialog box, you will insert your username and also your password, and you can then log in. When then you've logged in, you will be brought to this dashboard. So this is your dashboard. It will welcome you, and then it will bring you to Miss Zora here, and you can press this Miss Zora blocks. All right, then we will be brought to our Miss Zora interface. Now, before we start today's lesson, I just want to show you guys some of the things that we can code in Miss Zora. So to do that, I'm going to, like, for instance, we can code physical devices, things that we can touch. We can code that in Miss Zora. So I'm going to enable my camera here. And the first thing that we are going to do is to allow our camera. And let me say 0. Okay. So let me delete the sprite. First thing that I'm going to talk about is this device. It's called a Makey. And I think it's my thing is telling me my internet is unstable. So yeah, so we have Makey, and you have a space you can click. You have arrows if you want to do a game. You can design this game. You can actually connect this device to fruit, literally fruit, or anything that that conducts electricity. So you can connect it to fruit. You have things we call crocodile clips that clip on each one of these, and then you will code each of these. Each of these. Yeah. So you code the arrows. You will code this button. You will also code this button, and you can connect it to different things so that your code that is on Miss Zora is going to be controlled by this device here. And you can plug, as I said, you can plug an apple, you can plug an orange, you can even plug a banana. It will then read your code as you press on each of those fruits. I also have another device. It's called a BBC. Okay, let me just take it out. It's called a BBC microbit. It's a very nice tiny device called the BBC microbit, And we can also code it, and our code, whatever we code there, we can code letters, we can code words, and they will appear on these LEDs here. So as you are coding on Misora, you will then plug it via a USB cable onto the computer, and then whatever you code on the computer is going to appear on your device. And I can also plug it onto, suppose I'm a boy, so I play with boy toys. So I can plug it onto my toy cars. I've got toy cars that I've broken up, and I can then code this toy car. For instance, this one, it has this device which controls it, the BBC Micro, and I have a sensor here that senses for distance. Whenever it gets close to an obstacle, like a wall or anything that I've used as an obstacle, it will then it will tell this microbit how much distance is between the car and the obstacle. And then, of course, I will have written code to tell the microbit how to respond to that. I also have a sensor here. It's a line sensor. It, it, it basically follows a black line. So I'll put a black strip on the floor, and wherever it sees that black strip, it will then control the car to follow that strip. So I can also do that with other extensions in Misora, which I'm going to show you. And thirdly, I have this device also. It's called an Arduino. Don't mind the cables. I can also code this device, and I can plug in lights here or LEDs, and then I will control those LEDs to do certain things. And then finally, there is this one. My mind storms. So basically, it's sorry, it's a robot. Sorry about that. So basically, it's a robot. It's just in pieces now because I boxed it. So it's a robot, and yeah, you can control this robot using Misora also. So there's quite a lot of things that you can attach to Misora, to your computer, and use code so that you can see code coming to life. So those are things I think you may learn through the year at your school. So I'm excited to see what you guys can do, and I'm going to turn my video off at this point. So now, before we start again, I promised that yesterday we would take a few projects. If there's anyone that says they've done a project and they would like us to spotlight their project, or they want us to look at their project, is there anyone like that who says, I've done a project and I want to show everybody what I have done? Anyone who would like to show us their screen of a project that they have done before we continue with ours? Can nobody? If you just raise your hand, and then you can share your screen with us. All right, so no one has something they would like to share with us. That's okay also. We will go on. So now, let me just do this. Sorry. So what we have here is our Misora application, and we have a blank screen. If there's anyone that is joining us for the first time, we have a blank screen. There is nothing on our project. We don't have any sprites. We have not selected any sprites. And so what we are going to do, what we want to do today is is design a game. It's called a jumping game because I want to show you guys how to have a jumping effect on Miss Zora. So we have a few obstacles that are going to come to our sprite. And when we press a button of your choice, it is then going to jump these obstacles. All right. So now, the first thing that we are going to do is that we want to get a sprite. So we want to choose the sprite, and I'm going to choose, let's see what I'm going to choose. I had chosen Frank, so let's look at Frank. My internet is a bit slow today, so please forgive me. So I'm going to choose this sprite. And this is the sprite I'm going to choose. And he has other costumes as well. Okay, so he has other costumes as well. And I'm going to make him smaller. All right, then I'm going to choose a background. And I'm going to select, let's see, what can I use? Okay, I'm going to choose Night City. I'm going to choose that background. Okay, and I'm going to choose what we will use as an obstacle. Okay, I'm going to choose an obstacle. I'm going to choose, let's see, what can be, okay, I'm going to choose, okay, this egg because it breaks. So we have this egg now, and it also has other costumes. All right, so let's see if we can remove. Okay, no, it's fine. Let's let it like that. Sorry about that. My phone is going to ring. So sorry about that. Let me just put my phone on flight mode. Okay, so we have an obstacle which is going to move from this direction to that towards our Frank. And what you also do is that we want to have two obstacles, so we can duplicate this. And to make sure that they don't look alike, we are going to change their costumes. Okay, all of them, we're going to change their costumes just so that they stand apart. They don't look alike. You know, we know which one we are talking. We know which one is coming up. All right. So now that we have done that, we said we want Frank, when these guys come up to him, he must be able to jump over them. Let's just change them also. Let's just make them smaller. No. Let's put them 70. Then let's also put this one at 17. All right. Okay, so now what we do is that we start with Frank. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, one of the things that I want you to remember is that every space on our work area or our play area right here, it has a number that is associated with it. So if, for instance, I take this egg and put it on here, that where it is now has a position. It has an X position, and it also has a Y position where it is. So for instance, now it is at X is minus 30 and Y is 44. If I put it somewhere else, you will see that these values here will change. So it has a different position for each one. So what we want to do is that we want the position of these eggs to keep changing. So the position will just keep changing, going from left all the way to the right. And so that is what we now want to do. We want the position of these eggs to move from left all the way to the right. And when it gets to the right, we want it to come back to where it started and just keep doing that motion over and over and over again. Okay. So what we are going to do that is that we have events, and we'll say when you start the game or when I click the flag, we are dealing with this egg. Let's put this one up there. We are dealing with this egg, and we are going to put him right on the edge of our screen. And if you go to motion and go to, well, you go to the block, go to X and Y, it will give you the position of this egg, the exact position of that egg where it is standing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to connect this. So you will see now, whenever I click the flag, wherever the egg is, when I click the flag, it's going to move back to where it was. So that is this. I've done that. And so the second thing is that I want to make sure that I have counted lives. So I want to get things out of the way that are easy. I want to make sure that I have lives. So we are going to have a variable called life, lives. Okay, so we are going to have a variable called lives. And this variable called lives is going to be for counting when we have touched Frank. So whenever we touch Frank, you must decrease lives by 1. All right. So now we have, when we start the flag, it must go all the way to the corner there. All right. So now we want to say, when you have gone to that corner, we want this egg to move all the way towards Frank, all the way out of the screen. And we want to check what is the position of this egg now. So it's at 230, minus 238, minus 109 for Y. So we are going to then say it must glide for 1 second to this position. So now if we look at it, if we look again, so you can see that it moves from left to right. But now if we wanted to make it slower, we can change the number of seconds and make it 2. We can make it 3 if you wanted to make it slower. So it is going to get a bit slower, depending on how many seconds you tell it to glide across the screen. All right. So now we want to then say, if this egg touches Frank, something must happen. If this egg touches Frank, something must happen. So we are going to do an if block to say, if touching Frank, where is touching? If touching Frank, then something must happen. It must it must go back to where it belongs. It must go to where it needs to be, where it belongs. So it must go to this position, to 237. So it must go to the starting position, 237 and minus 112. So 237 minus 112. So let's see if it works. So, okay, it's not sensing Frank. If touching Frank, okay, let's see if we can also put a loop here. Let's see. It's not sensing Frank. It is not sensing Frank. Okay, so let's move. I'm going to come back to that sensing. I'm going to try and put this code in Frank because I see that it's not sensing Frank for one reason or the other. So for now, let us move to the next one, and we are going to try and put this code in Frank to say if touching egg, then it must move the egg to the other way. So now we have coded this guy. And one last thing is that when we start the game, when we start the game, you must start the lives by 10. So you must start lives by 10. So you will see it starts the lives by 10. So whenever you start the game, it must start the lives by 10, and then it must move the egg once again to its original place. Whenever you start the game, it must always move the game to the original place, 237 minus 112, just to make sure that it's always there. I know it does it here, but just to make sure that it always does it. So then we are done with that egg for now. Then we come to Frank, and Frank doesn't have any code. What we do is that we are going to start with the jumping code for Frank. And yesterday or Friday, I'm not sure which day it was. I think it was yesterday or Friday. I told you guys my mind has it keeps forgetting things these days. So we had what we called our own blocks. So we started creating our own blocks, and we then said you can create your own block. And this block, we are going to name it jump. Okay, so we are then going to click OK. We have now a new block called jump. And if we see this new block, it has nothing connected to it. We only just have the introduction of this other block here called jump. But if I click on it, nothing happens. If I click on them, nothing happens at all because there is no code that is written here. So why we do this is so that we can have this new block. Now, instead of writing a lot of code for this new block, every time we need to jump, instead of writing all that code over and over again, we can just introduce this code here. And that is how it's going to help us. Then, so how do we then jump? We want to say change Y, because you will remember up and down is Y, left and right or right and left is X here on our axis. So we want to jump this way and come back down. So we are going to change the X. Sorry, we're going to change the Y. So we then say change Y by 10. So we are going to say change y by 10. And I want to see the movement of his jumping. So I'm going to just say change costume or next costume. And in order to make him go up higher, I'm going to say he must repeat this movement 10 times. So there he jumps. He keeps on jumping, even though he looks like he's flying. But now you will see that this guy is not affected by gravity. If he goes up, he doesn't come down. So we want him to come back down to earth when he has finished jumping. So in order to do that, we are going to tell him to come back to earth. So we are going to say repeat 10 times. And this time we are going to change y by minus 10 because we are saying to him, come back to earth. Now that is what that's what happens now. So he keeps jumping and he keeps jumping in one space. And I will let you guys be the ones to change the game if you want to be able to move, to let him jump or move this way or to the left. And then if you want to jump, he can just press the space bar. So the final thing about this jumping is that we are then going to say, take you and put you here. And we are going to have a sound. When he jumps, we are going to have a sound. Let's say, let me just search for the sound. Okay, we'll search. I think let's use big boing. Okay, so whenever he jumps, he's going to make that sound. Okay, so now we have this jump. If you look at what we're going to do now, we are going to attach when the space bar is clicked. You see, so now when you click the space bar, it immediately goes and does all of this code for us. It does all of this code, and then it comes back and listens to the space or listens for the space bar. So whenever we press the space bar, it jumps and then it comes back for us, or it comes back to earth. Okay, so we are done with the jumping. Now we want to also change the lives whenever it touches the egg. You will remember that here, the problem with this is that the egg, whenever it touches it touches Frank, it doesn't move back. Now, when we want it that when this egg touches Frank, it must decrease the lives. So we are going to say when the flag is clicked, and we are going to say forever because we want this to be tested all the time. We are going to say if touching Frank, sorry, if touching egg, so sensing, if, where is touching? If touching mouse pointer, but we are going to say if touching egg. Now, there's something that I also want to introduce to you that I forgot to write on the outcomes. You will remember that the last time we used, I think we used and. So today we are going to use the or. So we are going to say or. Now the or block, basically one condition has to be true. We have two eggs here, egg 1 and egg 2. We want to say if Frank touches either egg 1 or touches egg 2, we must do something. You will remember that we said with an and, he has to touch both eggs for it to be correct. So with an OR, one condition has to be correct. It's either he is touching egg 1 or he is touching egg 2. So I'm going to connect that here and connect egg 2 here. So now we are going to test, is Frank touching egg 1? If Frank is touching egg 1 or Frank is touching egg 2, then we are going to change the lives by -1. So if it's touching if Frank is touching the egg, you must change the life by -1. So let's see. Now you will see that once it touches him, it immediately starts counting, and it doesn't stop until it gets to the other side of Frank. That is because it is when it touches Frank here, it doesn't go to this position. That is why it keeps counting. So we are going to have to change that and look for a better way of doing it. So let's move on with this. So we are saying if touching Frank, or if touching egg or touching egg 1 or egg 2, then you must always change lives by -1. Then we are on, I would say we are a quarter of the way to finishing with him. Then we have said, if touching egg, change lives by -1. Then we want to have another if inside here. That is going to check, it's called a nested if, remember. So if we have an if block inside of another if, we call that a nested if. So now we are going to say, if the lives, because we want to stop the game now, if the lives, operators, if lives equals 0, something must happen. You must also remember, or you must also just pay attention to this, that when we are coding in Misora and other programming languages, as you will learn as you go ahead, when we want to check something or the value of something, we will have what we are checking on the left-hand side and that which we are checking against on the right-hand side. So we say, if the lives are equal to 0, then something must happen. We don't say, if 0 equals lives, it won't work. So if lives are equal to 0, then what must then happen? It must stop the game. So only when the lives are equal to 0, it must stop the game. So let's make it -1 because we still have a bug here in our game. It's not going to get to 0. So let's make it, let's see. Okay, so yeah, it stopped the game. It did get to 0. So it stopped the game, it stops the game. So our game stops there. Then we can then bring egg number 2 and take all of this code and copy it across to egg number 2. You will see now he has that code. And we can take also this and transfer it to egg number 2. Let me just separate them. Now, if we start the game, both eggs are moving, but you will see that the eggs are moving, but we don't see egg number 2. In actual egg number 1, in actual fact, egg number 1 is there, but it is not, we cannot see it because they are moving at the same pace. So we want them to move at different pace. So we are going to introduce another block that I don't think we have spoken about. It is the random block. So we are going to say operators where is it now? Is it sensing? We want to get a random number. Where is this thing now? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So pick random number. Now, this pick random number is going to help us in getting these guys to move at different pace. So for instance, we want egg number 2 to not to glide at the same pace all the time. For now, it is going to take 2 seconds for him to move from here to the other side. But now we want it to take a, a random number of seconds for him to move across the stage. So we are going to take this pick random number and we are going to insert it. Instead of now saying glide, we are going to select, we are going to insert pick random number between 1 to 10. Now, what happens is this: when the code starts, it's going to go into this loop forever, and it's going to go to its original position. It's then going to say, it's going to start gliding. But once it starts gliding, once it gets to this code, it's going to pick a, excuse me, it's going to pick a random number between 1 and 10 seconds. So depending on what it has picked, that is how long it's going to take from this side to the other side. So let's test it. So you see now it's much slower. Now I think it's faster. It's slower now. So it chooses any number between 1 and 10. Okay, let's say 1 and 3. See there, excuse me. So there we are. Now it chooses a number between 1 and 3, and you can see that it's moving quicker than before. And so, okay, you will also see that there's some lag between my jump, between when I press the space key and the jump, because that is because of the internet. It's not because of any of the code, it's because of the internet. So now if we play our game, okay, then it gets to 0 and then it stops it. Okay, so here we have it. Okay, that's what it does. It's just because of the of my internet. My internet is has gone very slow today. So that is why it is having some, what is this word now? That's why it's jumping at a slower pace than when I press. See, they're supposed to go at the same time. So now, if we go back to the code, sorry for Frank, let me just see if we are done with him. Okay, sorry. The other thing that we also want to do, we want to have our own backdrops. We want to have a backdrop for starting the game and then a backdrop for ending the game. So we are going to come to backdrops. You will see then we have this backdrop, and we are going to add, let's say this is going to be our front screen, and we will call this jumping game. We'll change the color. Okay. Jumping game. And we'll make it larger. Okay. Okay, so we have a jumping game. All right, so when this game starts, it can actually just start with these guys standing next to our Frank, but it's up to you. So we have what we call a jumping game. Now, when we start the game the first time, when we start the game the first time, it must always come to this our background, the background that we have. It must go to our original background, which is this one. Okay, then when we end the game, when the game ends, it must go to a new one called, we are going to call it, game over. We're going to call this game, this backdrop, game over. As you can see, you can draw your own sprites, and you can draw your own backgrounds, and we'll call it game over. Okay, then we'll change the color. Okay, now we'll change the color. Now we come back to our code. We then say, if lives equals 0, then it must change the backdrop to, what did we call this? Backdrops. We are going to give it a name and say backdrop. No. I want to say game over. Okay, so it's going to change it and make it game over. There. So now whenever our game gets to 0, sorry, why did it not go to its original position now? Okay, there's one code that I did not do. I want this gorilla. I want Frank. When I start the game, he must always go to his original position. Which is minus 164 and minus 94. Okay, now it gets to 0, then it does game over. Okay, now, of course, my game has got a glitch. Because of my internet connectivity, I will never win this game because it's always just going to get me caught because it's not jumping quick enough because of my internet lag. All right. So I then said we are going to fix this code here, that if touching Frank, it must move to that original place. So I want to see why it is not working, because it keeps touching Frank and it doesn't move back to its original place. So we are saying here, if touching egg or touching egg 2, then change lives by -1. If lives equal to 0, that is fine. This is for Frank. And on this side, when flag is clicked, forever go to this position, glide here, okay? If touching Frank, go to 237, y minus 112, which should be fine. We should be fine. Which should be fine. Okay, let's see. It's still not doing it, but there is nothing wrong with the code. Let's move this one. You see, when it touches Frank, it's supposed to immediately move to the opposite end. So I'm not sure why it's not doing that, because the code is all correct according to my eyes. So I'm not going to play it, but you can play it at home, because the lag is just not, it won't allow me to play. So you can change different things within this game. And one of the things that I wanted us to really look at was the nested if statement, that you can have an if statement inside an if statement. How it works is that it will come to this first if statement and say, am I touching the egg? And if the egg is, if really they are touching each other, and then it's going to first change the lives by -1. Then it's going to come to here and say, is the life equal to 0? If the life is not equal to 0, it will not come into this code at all. It is going to go out and go back into the if statement and say, am I touching the egg? If it's not touching the egg at all, it's not going to do this code. It's going to skip this code. It's going to come to this if statement, and then it's going to say, is the lives equal to 0? If the lives are not equal to 0, it is going to skip this code also, and then it's going to go back up until this condition or this condition is true. Then when it's true, it's going to do this code. And then when this one also is true, it's going to do this code, and you have, it's going to stop the game after that. So I'm going to once again work on this one. I've saved, let me save this project. I'm going to save it as jumping game, which I'm going to work on to try and fix, because for some reason it's not working here. And so before I then conclude, I want to take some questions. If there's anyone with a question, you may now raise your hands. If you have a question or you have a comment. Okay, Lumbala, I hope I said your name correctly. You can unmute yourself, Lumbala.
Afternoon, sir.
Hello, sir.
Sir, why is Frank not jumping when the egg touches him?
No, it's not supposed to. It's only supposed to jump when I press the space bar. See, here's his code. He only supposed to jump when I press the space bar. But you'll also remember, I told you that I think because of my internet problem, well, I suppose my internet is slow today. So when I touch, there's a bit of lag. Can you see?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So there is lag when I do it because of the internet. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, sir.
You are welcome. Okay, so there's someone who's saying I must go to egg to sprite. Okuhle, can I unmute you to ask your question? Okuhle? Is Okuhle still with us? Okay, any question? Anyone else who has a question? Okay, Okuhle, I've asked you to unmute yourself.
I was asking if you could go back to egg 2 because when I press the green flag and it touches Frank, it doesn't do anything and it doesn't go back to where it started from.
Okay, so you have your code here, right? Forever go to
Yes.
X237 and then Y minus 112. Then
Yes.
it must glide by a random number from between 1 and 3. So
Okay.
now you are saying your egg, when it touches Frank, it doesn't what? It doesn't go back to this position.
Yes, it doesn't go back to the starting position.
Okay. Do you now have your if touching Frank code?
Yes.
Okay, then go to 237 minus 112. Do you have that?
No, I have a different number.
Okay. So just make this number here identical to this one here.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is happening? Okay, thanks for your question. So when I did this earlier offline, it was working fine. If I showed you my program that I did earlier, it was working fine. So I'm going to go back to see why it's not working. But thank you, Okutle, for your question. Let me know if that solves your problem. Okay, and then do I have, is there anyone else who has a question? Now, Tando, I'm going to answer you now. Nuria, I'm going to unmute you now. Nuria, you can unmute yourself. Nuria? Okay, I don't think Nuria wants to speak. Okay, any more questions? Oh, okay, sorry. I read on your chat, I thought you were asking a question on the chat. That's fine. Any questions? Okay. I think then we have come to the end of the session and I can conclude. So today we had a very, very brief game. I'm sorry that it couldn't work properly because of the internet lag. So we looked at how we can do a jumping movement in Scratch, in Misora. I'm sorry about the Scratch, in Misora. And we saw that we can make our sprite go up and then come back down by repeating doing the opposite code, right? So we have him going up and then we have the opposite code for him to come back down. We saw how we can have a nested if statements, how we can use those, which means we have an if statement inside another if statement, so that it tests a certain condition first before it tests a condition. If that condition is not met, it tests another condition. If that is not met, it will just continue doing that over and over again until the condition has been true. And then we also looked at how to create our own blocks again. And we said that we can then use this jump block. Now, if you look at my blocks, we can use the jump block, but because this time I only said this jump must be available to him. It is only available to him. But if I had said that this jump block must be available to the other sprites as well, we could use this jump motion. We can just go and drag this, and we don't have to write this code again. We only just need to write it once. And we also looked at how to get our egg to move from one place to the other, and just to keep repeating that code as our game moves on. So we've come to the end of the lesson, and I want to thank you guys for the time that you have taken to log in. And the first thing that I'm going to do tomorrow afternoon when we start, I am going to show you guys the code when I have fixed it. I'm going to show you how I have done that fix. Offline, it was working fine. I'm not sure why it's not working here. And I'm going to go back to my original internet, which is not going to make sure that we don't have the lag that we are experiencing. And so thank you very much. And I'm going to ask our host not to end this meeting. I'm going to stop sharing. Please, we'll see you guys tomorrow. I have Utando. Tando, please don't log out. I just want to help